In the spectrum measurements of the 6000 series, there is a measurement called total power. This can be very useful for measuring the total power of RF pulse type waveforms. So in this section we're going to measure the characteristics of this particular RF pulse waveform. So we can see it has a rep rate frequency being measured of 1 megahertz, and the pulse width of each pulse is about 43 nanoseconds. So this is corresponding to a frequency of around about 20 megahertz. So now we're going to move into the spectrum display. So first thing we do is measure the power, the total power of this particular signal. So I'm going to add the measurement and we're going to select total power. Select OK. So here we see the total power. This particular pulse signal is around 80 milliwatts. So this gives a very useful indication of the total power of a signal. Further, we can measure the frequency content of the signal. So again, we could use the cursor and just position it on the first component of the lobe here, and that is 1 megahertz. So we can directly here measure the rep rate of the signal. And if we measure the frequency of the first lobe, this will tell us information about the pulse width. So in fact we measured it as 40 nanoseconds, which again corresponds to the frequency of around about 20 megahertz. So we can get a much more accurate measurement now of the RF pulse type signal. And further we can see the clock pulse is very repetitive, but there is some more random RF signal here, and if we put the cursor on that, that is around about 80 megahertz. So again, if we look back at the YT type display, in fact yes, we can see there is another RF pulse signal there, and in fact if we just trigger on that, we could actually try and just get some measurement on the frequency of the RF pulse and look at the duration of that particular signal. So put there. So again, it's around about 12 nanoseconds, so this would correlate to a frequency up in the sort of 50 megahertz area. So the spectrum total power measurement is very useful for characterizing RF pulse type signals.